Many think that ancient wisdom is just that ancient, that it has no relevance to the complex world of today, but that couldn't be further from the truth. I've been digging into texts that have shaped the world for centuries, finding hidden insights that are as relevant as ever. And today, we're unpacking one of the most powerful of them all. That's what 10x Wiser is all about, delivering transformative insights, empowering you to solve challenges and become your best self. So make sure to hit that like button, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe for more deep dives. And now welcome our host and guest for today's podcast, Tony and Harper.
All right, welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. And today we are going to be looking at something that's pretty interesting. It's it's a classic, right? The Art of War by Sun Tzu.
Yeah.
But we're specifically looking at Lionel Giles' translation of this text, which, we were talking a little bit before the show, and you were saying how, there's so many different ways to approach this book.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of those texts that people have been reading and rereading for centuries, and every time you come back to it, you find something new.
Yeah.
And I think part of the reason for that is because it's not just about warfare.
Yeah.
We tend to think of warfare as purely physical, right?
Yeah.
You know, armies clashing on a battlefield.
Right.
But Sun Tzu was really playing 4D chess while everyone else was still figuring out checkers, you know?
Okay. So.
He was thinking about the psychological aspects, the strategic aspects, the long game in a way that most people weren't even considering at the time.
So Sun Tzu, this legendary military strategist.
Yeah.
But, writing in ancient China, like thousands of years ago.
Right, right.
What makes this relevant to like someone today dealing with, I don't know, a tough negotiation at work?
That's where it gets really interesting, because Sun Tzu lived during a period in Chinese history called the Warring States period.
Yeah.
And it was a time of constant conflict, shifting alliances, betrayals, backstabbing. It sounds a lot like office politics sometimes, doesn't it?
Ooh, I see where you're going with this.
Exactly. And so the core of the Art of War is about strategy.
Yeah.
But it's not just strategy on a battlefield. It's about understanding your situation, understanding your opponent, understanding yourself, and then using that knowledge to achieve your goals.
So it's like a mental toolkit for any kind of conflict.
Precisely.
Not just literal war.
Yeah, think about it. Deception, swift action, knowing the terrain. These are all metaphors that can be applied to business relationships, even personal growth.
Okay, before we get too deep into all of that, let's actually just set the stage a little bit. Like, who was Sun Tzu really?
Yeah.
Is this guy even a real historical figure?
That's a debate that's raged for centuries,
Really?
Some scholars think that the Art of War might actually be a compilation of wisdom from several different military minds, not just one person.
Okay.
But the brilliance of the text itself kind of transcends that question.
Yeah.
It's like Shakespeare. We argue about who really wrote the plays.
Right.
But the impact is undeniable regardless.
Yeah. So we're not just dealing with some philosophical theory here. We're talking about like this was street-tested, battlefield-proven stuff.
Absolutely. And that's why it stood the test of time,
Okay.
These weren't armchair generals. They were dealing with life or death situations. Their insights have a certain weight to them.
I'm already getting chills.
Yeah.
All right. Hit me with some of those key takeaways, those timeless strategies that, people are still using today.
Okay, well, one of the most famous lines from The Art of War is, all warfare is based on deception. Right. And think about it, in any kind of negotiation, you don't lay all your cards on the table right away, do you?
True. You got to keep them guessing a little bit.
Exactly. Sun Tzu was all about outsmarting your opponent, understanding their weaknesses and exploiting them. He even said, the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting.
Whoa. So it's about avoiding direct conflict whenever possible.
Exactly. He believed in being swift, decisive, minimizing losses. Why drag out a fight if you can achieve your objective through clever maneuvering?
Okay, that started to sound a little ruthless, though, I gotta say. I mean, is this all just about being manipulative to get what you want?
That's where the ethical debate comes in.
Yeah, okay.
Some people see the Art of War as a guide to cold-hearted manipulation, prioritizing victory above all else. And there are definitely some critiques of that view.
Yeah, this quote from one of our sources really stuck with me. It said, the stratagems and deceits by which the military philosophers promised to reduce violence wreaked even greater damage on the fabric of human society than any physical brutality.
That's a powerful statement, and it highlights the potential danger of relying solely on cunning and trickery.
Right.
There's a fine line between strategic thinking and outright manipulation.
So how do we reconcile these two sides?
Yeah.
I mean, is the art of war a masterpiece of strategy, or is it a handbook for ruthlessness?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And to understand that, we need to look at the philosophical context of ancient China.
Okay, so let's go back in time for a minute.
Yeah.
What was the philosophical scene like back then?
Well, you had different schools of thought competing with each other. Confucianism, for instance, was all about morality, benevolence, ethical leadership.
So kind of the opposite of what we've been talking about with Sun Tzu.
Not necessarily opposite, but definitely a different emphasis.
Sure.
It's like there are these competing philosophies trying to figure out, the best way to lead, the best way to win, the best way to live.
So it was less about good versus evil and more like two different paths
Right.
trying to reach a similar destination.
Right. Exactly. And that tension is what makes the art of war so fascinating even today.
Yeah.
It forces us to consider the complexities of leadership morality and strategy.
I'm already feeling like I need to go back and reread this book with a whole new perspective.
It's worth it. I promise you. Every time I revisit the art of war, I find new layers of meaning, new insights that apply to my own life.
Well, before we apply it to our lives, let's talk about the guy who brought it to us in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Lionel Giles, our translator.
Right.
What's his deal?
So Lionel Giles was a brilliant scholar of Chinese culture.
Oh, okay.
Imagine the challenge of translating a text like this
Right.
with all its nuanced concepts and cultural references into English.
It's like trying to explain, I don't know, the intricacies of quantum physics
Yeah.
to someone who's never taken a science class.
You're not wrong.
Yeah.
Giles had to find a way to make these ancient ideas accessible to a modern Western audience, and he did a remarkable job.
So we owe a debt of gratitude to Lionel Giles for unlocking this ancient wisdom for us.
Without skilled translators like him, so much of the world's knowledge would remain hidden behind language barriers.
Okay. I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together. The historical context, the philosophical debates, the brilliant translation. But how does this ancient text actually apply to our modern lives?
That's what we'll explore next. Get ready to see how Sun Tzu's wisdom can be a game changer in business relationships and even your own personal growth.
Bring it on. I'm ready to unlock my inner strategist.
All right. So are you ready to see how the art of war can actually be applied to your life?
I'm all ears. We've laid the groundwork.
Okay.
I'm ready for some of those actionable insights.
All right. Let's start with something that I think most of us face on a regular basis, work.
Okay.
The art of war is huge in the business world.
Really? I always thought it was more of a military history buff kind of thing.
Well, think about it. Companies are constantly competing for market share, resources, talent.
Right.
I mean, it's a battlefield, just not a literal one.
Okay, I see that. So how do CEOs and managers actually use this ancient text?
Well, one example is market analysis.
Okay.
Sun Tzu stresses the importance of knowing your enemy.
Yeah.
Right, in business. That means understanding your competitors, their strengths, their weaknesses.
So doing your research, figuring out what they're good at, where they're vulnerable.
Exactly. And then you can use that knowledge to position your own company strategically.
Okay.
It's about finding the gaps in the market, the opportunities they've missed.
It's like playing chess, not checkers, like you said before.
That's a great analogy.
Anticipating moves, thinking several steps ahead.
Absolutely. Another key takeaway from the art of war is adaptability.
Okay.
Sun Tzu knew that battle plans rarely survive first contact with the enemy.
Yeah.
Same in business. The market is constantly changing. You got to be flexible.
So it's not about sticking rigidly to a plan.
Right.
But having the principles to adapt on the fly.
Precisely. The art of war provides a framework for decision-making, not a set of hard, fast rules. It's about principles, not prescriptions.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
What about something like negotiation, though?
Yeah.
That seems less warlike,
Right.
more about compromise.
Well, even in negotiations, there's a subtle dance of power dynamics,
Yeah.
And the art of war can help you understand those dynamics,
Okay.
leverage your strengths, and even anticipate your opponent's moves.
So even when you're trying to be collaborative,
Right.
there's still an element of strategy involved.
Absolutely. Think about something like a salary negotiation.
Mm.
You don't just walk in and demand what you want.
Right.
You need to know your worth. You need to research industry standards, and you need to present your case persuasively.
It's like preparing for battle, but instead of armor, you're armed with information
Exactly.
and confidence.
And that applies to all sorts of negotiations, from buying a car to resolving a conflict with a friend.
Okay.
It's about understanding the stakes, the players, and the desired outcome.
This is blowing my mind a little bit. I'm starting to see how this ancient wisdom can be applied to so many different areas of life.
And it goes even deeper. People have even used the art of war for personal growth and self-improvement.
Wait, really? How does a military treatise help you become a better person?
Well, think about it. We all have internal battles, right?
Oh, yeah.
Bad habits we want to break.
Yeah.
Goals we want to achieve, fears we need to overcome.
Oh, yeah. I'm definitely at war with procrastination sometimes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, Sun Tzu's emphasis on discipline, self-control, knowing your weaknesses.
Yeah.
These are all relevant to personal growth.
So it's like using those same strategic principles, but turning them inwards.
Precisely. Imagine you're trying to quit smoking, for example.
Okay.
You can use Sun Tzu's ideas to identify your triggers, strategize ways to avoid them, and strengthen your resolve.
Wow, that's a whole new way of looking at self-improvement.
Right.
It's like I need to map out my own personal battle plan.
That's the spirit. You know, the art of war reminds us that victory, whether it's on a battlefield or in our own lives, requires strategic thinking, adaptability, and a deep understanding of ourselves and the challenges we face.
This is all incredible, but I have to admit, I'm still wrestling with that whole deception aspect.
Yeah.
Like, isn't there a risk of becoming too manipulative if we take those teachings too literally?
You're right to raise that concern. You know, that's the heart of the ethical debate around the art of war.
Okay.
It's a powerful tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or for ill.
So how do we make sure we're using it ethically?
Yeah.
How do we find that balance between being strategic and being a good person?
That's a question that philosophers have grappled with for centuries. Let's dive into that a bit deeper.
So where do we draw that line then between strategy and manipulation? I'm still kind of grappling with that.
Yeah, it's a question that goes to the heart of the art of war and its enduring relevance. You know, remember Sun Tzu was writing in a time of constant warfare where survival often depended on outsmarting your opponent?
So in that context, deception might have been seen as like a necessary evil?
Exactly. It wasn't about being malicious. It was about ensuring your own survival in a very cutthroat world.
So how do we apply that to our modern lives? You know, we're not exactly fighting for our lives in a boardroom meeting.
True, but there are still power dynamics at play, you know, and the art of war reminds us that being naive or unprepared can put you at a disadvantage.
So it's about being aware of those dynamics, but not necessarily resorting to underhanded tactics.
Right. It's about understanding the rules of the game,
Yeah.
even the unspoken ones, and knowing how to use strategy to achieve your goals without compromising your integrity.
Okay, that makes sense. But I think there's still a danger of taking some of Sun Tzu's teachings too.
Yeah.
Literally, like, should I really be trying to deceive my boss to get a raise?
That's where discernment comes in, you know?
Yeah.
The art of war isn't a license to be manipulative.
Right.
It's a framework for thinking strategically.
Okay.
And that means considering the ethical implications of your actions.
So it's not just about winning, it's about winning the right way.
Exactly. Sun Tzu himself emphasized the importance of righteousness and just leadership.
Okay.
He believed that true victory came from aligning your actions with what's right and honorable.
Okay, that puts my mind at ease a bit. It's about using strategy for good, not for personal gain at any cost.
Exactly. Think of it like this. A skilled surgeon can use a scalpel to save a life or to cause harm.
Right.
It's the same tool, but the intention and the outcome are vastly different.
Oh, that's a powerful analogy. So how do we make sure we're wielding the art of war like a surgeon and not like, you know...
A villain in a movie.
Yeah.
It all comes back to self-awareness and ethical reflection.
Okay.
You know, before you apply any of Sun Tzu's teachings, ask yourself, what are my motivations here? Am I acting in alignment with my values?
It's like that classic Spider-Man quote, with great power comes great responsibility.
Exactly. The art of war is a powerful tool, and it's up to us to use it wisely and ethically.
This whole deep dive has been a real eye-opener. I'm starting to see the art of war in a whole new light.
It's a text that rewards repeated readings and reflections.
Yep.
You'll find something new in it every time you revisit it.
So as we wrap up, what are some key takeaways our listeners should keep in mind?
Well, first, remember that the art of war is about more than just physical battles. You know, it's a guide to strategic thinking that can be applied to every aspect of your life.
Right, from negotiating a raise to overcoming procrastination.
Exactly. Second, don't be afraid to adapt and adjust your strategy as needed. You know, the world is constantly changing, and rigidity will only hold you back.
Be like water, as Bruce Lee said.
Exactly. And finally, remember that true victory comes from aligning your actions with your values. Don't compromise your integrity for the sake of winning.
Win the right way, even if it takes a little longer.
Couldn't said it better myself.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the art of war. It's been a fascinating journey through history, philosophy, and strategy.
I've learned so much. Thanks for being our guide through this complex and intriguing text.
My pleasure. It's always a joy to share these timeless works and explore their hidden depths.
And to our listeners, we hope you've gained some valuable insights and are ready to apply Sun Tzu's wisdom to your own lives.
Remember, the battle for self-improvement is never truly over.
So stay strategic, stay adaptable, and stay true to yourselves until next time.
That brings us to the end of today's episode. We've seen today that sometimes the oldest wisdom is the key to understanding our modern challenges, and that by focusing on understanding the nature of things, we can find an edge in all that we do. Thank you so much, Harper, for sharing your insightful perspectives and for your time. Your deep understanding of this topic really helped pull out core elements that will benefit our listeners. And Tony, thanks for guiding the conversation and asking all of the questions that our audience was thinking about. Before we sign off, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. What's your biggest takeaway from today's discussion? And what other books would you like us to cover? Your engagement helps this channel to reach and impact a wider audience. If you want to explore the ideas we discussed in more detail, grab a copy of the book we explored today from the Amazon link in the description. Thank you so much for joining us, and remember to never stop searching for wisdom that can empower you in all walks of life.